happen. And these, some of the questions where I want to sort of leave in your minds, and hopefully we can see, what we can do, and show a bit of what we're doing at Saxonica at the moment. Okay, so what do I mean by XML on the web? What I really mean is, what would be good is XML in the browser, but the browser have documents, but most of that XML never really reaches the browser. It's often converted at server side using various languages, XQuery, PHP, Java. There are a number of languages, and at the moment, you can use XLT 2.0 on the server, which is great. But let's sort of look at the history. Well, XLT 1.0, or it was, the goal was, it started with sort of XSL FO, where we have sort of a format which can be used to represent the documents in the browser. And you have Microsoft in IE4 was one of the first people to sort of drive forward their plug-in version of XLT 1.0, and they did this it's a sort of a false start, because they done this quite early while it was a working draft. And the unfortunate thing is, when you sort of drive forward something as a working draft, when it is sort of recommended standard, there were sort of flaws in their implementation, and they eventually sort of caught up in IE4, where it was a part of the actual Internet Explorer, and it took a long time for other browsers to fully implement XLT 1.0, and this helped to drive forward. But the problem is, this sort of XLT 1.0 is sort of geared for the Web 1.0 architecture. We have static documents, and still there are sort of these interoperability problems. It wasn't sort of 100%. There were problems, going between the browsers, and and at the same time, we have JavaScript, CSS, JQ, JSON, and all these, these sort of tooling available in the browser, which sort of put XLT 1.0 and sort of XML in the browser in sort of shadow. And while that was happening, JavaScript, the browser vendors, can you imagine using JavaScript as a VM, and that's what they did. You can develop great applications using JavaScript, but it's terrible. It's quite daunting to working with the DOM. There's sort of challenges there, and can you imagine sort of debugging these JavaScript applications? It's quite hard work. And while that all's happened, we have JSON. Sorry, not JSON. We have Ajax, all these sort of Web 2.0 applications, which was great because they were supporting the events and interactions which XLT 1.0 wasn't able to do. So the whole sort of motivation behind the talk is, how can we bring XLT 2.0 and XML closer to the browser, where we're supporting those sort of Web 2.0 features of interaction and event handling, which would be great. So, a bit more on the motivation. We're trying to move XLT 2.0 to the browser, and sort of in the theme of this Web 2.0 architecture. Some of the great things we can do with XLT 2.0 is we can have multiple result documents. We can sort of make use of these modes to support the events. This is where we sort of have extensions. So when you click on something, an event, you have a template rule which matches that, and you can do whatever. Access to the dynamic HTML DOM, access to the browser window, and also support animation. These are all some of the great things which we would like to do. So we want to bring XLT 2.0 to the browser and more. There are a lot of these Web 2.0 feature-rich interaction that we want to support. So I think at this stage, I would like to sort of go straight into a demo and then show you how it's built. So here I'm going to show you, let me, okay, so this is a technical documentation application driven by Saxon CE, and what we have here, we have style sheets written in XLT 2.0, and the content of this application is all mostly written in XML. Well, most of it is actually HTML5, but you know, it's sort of mixed together really. But the key thing here is there's that initial stage where when you open the application, it downloads Saxon CE, and when you sort of click on each section, it downloads the relevant XML document which relates to those sections on the fly. And as you go through clicking on the very section, it's continuing to download this XML, which are then cached. And all sort of now going between the page of the document is all done client side, which is great because it's a lot quicker than sort of always dealing with the server. And just a bit more of the features, there's sort of a breadcrumbs here on the sort of history of where you are, so navigation is great. You can just look at sort of the change history. This is the documentation on the Saxon releases. Okay, so let's sort of look at the XML behind this as well. Okay. So this is the XML file. This is the XML file which we sort of maintain the history of between the releases. So currently at Saxon 9.5, and some information here on what's changed between categories. And you know what we're doing here is a style sheet which sort of picks up the various bits, and you can sort of compare between the releases, which is great. And you know, it's difficult to do this in JSON, because yes, you have JSON, which is a great data model, but using JSON as a document is very difficult, and XML is much better. So let's now go back to the slides. Actually, before I do that, the great thing about, we use these hashbang to sort of between the sections, so you can actually give somebody those URIs, and it points exactly to that relevant section and the subsections as well. And we also support searching. And this is all done client side. And can you imagine how can you do that with a sort of unusual way? You have to sort of communicate with the server. And every time you communicate with the server, there's that sort of time factor there. To search between web pages, you often have to use a search engine. But this is searching between the XML files as if it was just a single web page. And all we're doing here in the XLT is just doing fn contains to sort of go between the XML files. It does highlight the text as well. but it's in a sort of a very faint colour, so it's quite difficult to see. Okay. So just a summary of the feature of this application. Well, the documents are stored on the server. It's actually stored in using XHTML5, but we use custom XML formats for the change history and also the Java docs as well. There's no server-side component in this application. There's a single-page application using hash bang URI to sort of go between the sections. And a bit more on the user interface features. Persistent and visible URIs, intra-site links and table of content, and it's, you can search between the pages as well. Now, let's go and I'll show you another application. It's a lot more simple one. Okay, this is a simple sort of book list, and you can now try to do sorting in JavaScript is very difficult, and it's child's play in XLT 2.0. So you can sort by the authors, by the titles. You can sort of click on bits you want to remove and show. So this is a little simple illustration to show you how we can do sorting as well. I don't know why it keeps jumping to the start. Right, and just to show you a bit of XLT code on how that's done. We're sort of reusing the modes to support this on click. So when you click on those, on the sort of TH element, the temporal rule which matches that using on click. And what you're doing, that temporal rule is then going to be sort of rendered audio output to sort of a result document. And I'm not going to sort of go into the sort of detail here, but the key thing here, we sort of pick where we clicked, it does the sorting, and then we sort of output that using result document. So what are we doing? Well, we're sort of manipulating the HTML DOM tree. So when you sort of click on a link, you can do whatever in the template rule. You can call result document to append to that element that you clicked on, or to replace the content within that div element or whatever element you've clicked on. And it will sort of insert there a subtree at that point, or for append. And you can have on-click events handling on other parts of the tree as well. So it's a great language for, we're supporting in Saxon C, we're supporting events, and also you can call back to JavaScript functions. So you can totally just have XLT 2.0, or you can sort of call back to your JavaScript if you need to as well. Now let's sort of look at how this is all done. So Saxon CE, we stripped down Saxon 9.3 code base, got rid of all the sort of optimizations that we didn't need, the XQuery support, and we got it down to sort of 60k lines of code. It's still conformant with XLT 2.0, and the file size is 900 KB, which is great in terms of downloading the application, when you want to run a Saxon CE application. The great thing is JavaScript is you can use it as a sort of that VM is powerful. And Google were one of the first. They created JWT, which allows you to compile your Java code into JavaScript. So what do we have now? Well, we can have a single HTML page we've got our Saxon in JavaScript executable, and our style sheets, which we can call, and also optional XML files, which sort of are stored statically on the server, which are downloaded within the application. And just to show you also, this is the book list example. So we call the Saxon EC with this bit of code. So in the script element, sorry I can't sort of zoom into that. And we use the script element to sort of to call the XSLT and the style sheet and the data source as well. And pretty much that's it. This is the XSLT. That's bootstrapped when you load the page, and it runs the template match, and there are various template rules which are sort of invoked when you click on it, unclick events for various parts of the application. So what we have is, we're now supporting XLT 2.0 in the browser, but more. We're also handling the extensions, using interaction that you expect in web, sort of natural Web 2.0 architecture. You can support animations, and you can also get access to the JavaScript browser environment and sort of call back to your JavaScript functions as you need. And the good thing is, it's cross-browser interoperable. What actually happens is, for each browser, there's a JavaScript file which GWT creates. So if you open the application in Firefox, it downloads the JavaScript for that browser. In IE 5 or whatever, it does a similar thing as well. And the great thing is the tool is available as open source. So there's no sort of real sales pitch of such nowadays, because it's all open source at the start of this year. And the documentation tools available on this link, and you can download Saxon CE and give it a try. Try using it and developing, something which you would like to, and tell us about as well. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Got quite a bit of time for questions, so yeah.
Can you tell us how many implementations and websites there are that are using this sort of in production now?
Well, that's difficult for me to say. I don't really know actually, but there are people doing different interesting things. People, do things with sort of SVG. We try our best for people who sort of give feedback on what they're doing to sort of have links on our website. So there are a few links of people who are using it. Sort of you can sort of have a look at our saxonica.com and have a look at those applications. Recently, I tried with my. I'm involved in a choir, and the site is not yet live. But what I've done is to implement a sort of event management system or calendar, you could say, and it's driven by Saxon CE. So you can sort of have the events stored in XML, and they appear on the calendar, and it's sort of all sort of dynamic and interactive in terms of going between the months and opening up the event. You can do great stuff. That's what I found.
Yeah. What browsers is it known not to work on? Basically, if you use this browser, don't try bothering.
Well,
and
yeah.
how is it on mobile platforms? Android, iPad,
Yeah.
iPhone.
The great thing is, wherever JavaScript is supported, Saxon C is supported. So it works on your mobiles. At XML Prague, I think a couple of years ago, Mike K, he showed a chess game, a night's tour of the chess game, showing on his mobile. So I could even show you on the mobile how it works, and it was great. And a similar thing on the iPad, on the mobile devices. Wherever JavaScript is supported, it works.
Even an IE.
Even
Wow.
yeah.
So how, that looks really good, but how do you position it? Is it, because if you're really creating quite complex sites, then is this quite low level because you have to update parts of your DOM, and then if something changes you have to update it again, and it's getting quite complex.
Well, okay, so in terms of, there's a sort of an update list, which if there's things going on at the same time, what happens is you can delay certain actions in terms of the update, and then sort of append it to a list, which will then be updated eventually. So that's how we sort of get around that sort of real-time sort of interaction going on. And it's quite simple in terms of the, I don't know if it's sort of answering your question, but we have developments, which is like a skeleton HTML document. So the development, which will be then referred back into the style sheets to then change the content within that development, which is given by the ID book. I don't know if that's what you sort of.
But will it be quite difficult to track dependencies of if you display one in your XML, one thing at a lot of places in your document, and if something changes in the XML, how do you know where to update your page, or is it more for static?
And there's some arts that is on the DOM in the browser, so you can have the data directly in the browser and change it directly.
But
So you don't have something that separate XML and to transform that and put it in the browser. You can act directly on the data in the browser.
Okay, but then yeah. But then if you have display the same data multiple times, then you have to update it if you have an input field that changes something.
Yeah, if you have that in two places in the browser, the same data, you can do that with the XSLT change that and that. Those places.
Yes.
Does the browser expose the source XML to the user?
Yes, you can sort of, that will be sort of at the same level, so you can. Oh. It's also client side, so it's downloaded on the client machine. There are ways. For example, at XML Prague, we did some sort of server-side bits to it where we communicated with Twitter, so we played chess over Twitter. So you can sort of shift some of the data, or the data model sort of via the server, which you can sort of do that as well if you need to. Sort of switch back to JavaScript, which sort of calls a server, which if you don't want that to happen, if you don't want the XML to be sort of used.
Lim? Hi. I was wondering about development tools and debugging or perhaps interactive development. What do you see in the future?
Okay. Well, the start sheet just use Oxygen to do the sort of development of the style sheets. Now, the good thing about Saxon CE, if you can, there's sort of some debug options here which you can do, and this is all in the sort of documentation. So So you can, it tells you what's going on really, and you can have message. You can add to it sort of these Excel message instructions to output data, certain data if you want to do a bit of debugging as well. So it's all available in terms of debugging. It's a lot easier than using
So you can use standard JavaScript tools.
Yeah. And if if it's broken, if your style sheet is broken because of a user error, it won't compile. It will tell you that there's something wrong around this line. And the good thing is you can sort of navigate, as it uses Saxon's trace facility as well. You can. Yeah.
You should have saved this for the demo jam.
This is cool. Really cool.
Okay, last question. I was just wondering, you said earlier that you cut out a lot of the optimizations to get it down to 900k.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the limits of where CE is a good solution for things? What are your edge cases? Where do you run out of?
Well, to be honest, Saxon is very high quality code base, and in terms of the optimizations, we haven't seen any great performance issues. In any of the applications we've developed myself or have used. The optimization where we can get rid of it, it's all to do with if it's not hurting the user, we sort of remove it. In terms of like xQuery, which we're not supporting xQuery. It's possible good, but we're just interested in XLC 2.0. Yeah.
Well, I guess you don't use a single XML document to represent your whole site. How big of an XML document? I mean, you're clearly bigger than your Ajax chunk, but you're not your whole site. Cool.